Hello. We now come to the third and final part of this model for a gospel conversation called Connect, Share and Establish. We're going to focus upon the category called Establish. What this is referring to is once you've actually connected with people and shared the gospel, what's really important is to be able to then establish them on a pathway to knowing more about Jesus. I want to suggest to you three ways in which you could establish people further on this pathway to knowing more about Jesus. The first of which is that you could give them a resource, perhaps a copy of the Gospel. I've got here a copy of the Gospel of Luke, which is really easy to be able to read. This is something that you could leave them with, and they could go and quietly read and think about what they're actually reading, which would be a wonderful thing. But how would you go about actually introducing this particular resource into the conversation? Well, I would say very simply that I'm giving out a copy of the Gospel of Luke. It's a copy that's for free. I wonder whether you would like one. Now let's just say they say yes, which would be really wonderful. Just don't leave it at actually giving them the actual copy. Ask them this question: would it be all right in a few weeks if I could ask you how you found it, whether you have any questions? The beauty of asking that, and if they say yes, is that of course you then have a continuing ministry to that particular person. And in the time in between, they've had the opportunity to hear from God directly through His Word. So it's very possible that when you go and meet with them, that there may be a changed disposition in terms of their attitude towards Jesus. So it's a very, very important question to be able to ask. If they say no, then if they're still happy to receive a copy of the Gospel, then just leave that with them, and we trust that God will unfold things according to His plan. The second way to be able to establish people on a pathway to knowing more about Jesus is to offer to read the Bible with them. So rather than giving them a copy of the Bible and them going and doing it themselves, why not offer to actually read part of the Bible with them? This is something that's a very simple thing to be able to offer, but it usually is very frightening for people because they think that's too heavy, or they might think that they don't have enough expertise to be able to read the Bible with them. Well, you don't have to know everything as you read the Bible with people, but the great thing is that you have it in front of you, they have it in front of you, and you can actually learn together. You can talk about the things that you do know, you can flag the areas where you don't know the answer to something, and perhaps be able to find out the answer during the next period of time that separates one appointment from another with that particular person. But how are you going to introduce this into the actual conversation? Well, I would say, look, I wonder whether you would be interested to catch up and to be able to read part of the Bible with me, and then we'll have a chat about it afterwards. That would be a great thing to be able to ask someone. You could then just refer them to something that is relevant for their lives in your estimation, or you could just work sequentially through the actual Gospels. The third option, in terms of establishing someone on a pathway to knowing more about Jesus, is to actually invite them to church. A lot of people would make this the first thing that they do in terms of their evangelism, and they wouldn't be so concerned with the connecting stage or the sharing stage, or offering a resource or offering to read the Bible with people. But in my experience, very few people do accept this particular offer, and if they do, very few people actually do turn up to church, and it can be very disappointing and very discouraging for people who are seeking to do evangelism, and very often I suspect that people just give up. Well, I certainly don't want to discourage people from inviting other people to church. That's a really, really good thing. But what I do want to say is that I think you would be better placed to be able to help them to hear about Jesus and to read and think about Jesus before they actually come to church. Because people have a lot of baggage about who Jesus is and in terms of what church is like. So giving them that opportunity to be able to hear, to read and to think gives them the opportunity to deconstruct their views and enables also the opportunity for Jesus to be understood clearly. I think it's then much more likely that people are actually going to make the effort to get up on a Sunday morning or what have you to be able to go along to a church service. So there are three particular ways in which you can go about establishing someone on a pathway to knowing more about Jesus. But that brings us to a conclusion of this particular model of going about a gospel conversation, the connect, share and establish model. I find it very helpful to be able to remember just those three headings as I enter into a conversation. I know where I've come from and I know where I'm hopefully going. And that gives me confidence and it gives clarity in terms of the actual conversation. And it also enables me to be able to achieve the objective of intentionally seeking to share Jesus with people. I think it's really important also to note that as best we can, we ought to try to make sure that all three components are in the conversation. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you, and I wish you all the very, very best. In fact, I pray for the very best for you in terms of seeking to share Jesus in general conversation.